And if we can just get the first slide up on the board there. All right. I want to have a look at the book of... Sorry, I said talk amongst yourselves. That's okay. I'm happy for you to do that for a while. But we'll get going. I want to look at this topic because if you're looking at what's going on in the world at the moment, it's a very interesting time. And it just feels like something's building, doesn't it? I mean, I know that's stating the obvious, but just on a lot of fronts, there's a lot of things happening. And, just at work the other day, people were talking about it next to me, about what's happening in Israel. And their comment sort of was, I just don't know the cause. I just don't know why this has to happen. Why did this war happen and why is this one going on? And I just said, well, it actually goes back to a family thing between two brothers, and it goes back thousands of years, and the conversation went dead silent. They didn't want to talk about it. They knew where it was going, and even though people are very fearful and don't have answers and so on, people don't want to talk about it. And I suppose if we're not careful, I suppose we can be a bit the same. None of us ever want to see harm happen to our world, but what is incredible, and why I want to look at the book of Revelation particularly, and a part of it tonight, is that God is incredible, and through his word, he's incredibly succinct at detailing what will happen through symbol, and that it's part of his plan and he's got it in control. And so we'll just go through on that sort of thought. So I'll try and keep this succinct. Basically, though, to just come in, there's a lot of people that will come in and say, well, this part of the book of Revelation, it means this. And people pull all kinds of things out. And there's basically four backgrounds for the book of Revelation. One is that it's spiritual, and so that it's all spiritual and it has no relevance to anything going on earth, either previously or currently. It's just all spiritualised. The second one is preterist. So in other words, that all of it sort of took place and it's all relating to really the time of Nero, when Rome became on fire. There's a great fire of Rome, and that it was all sort of dealing with back then. The one that's most common is the futurist interpretation of Bible prophecy. So in other words, there's the letters to the seven churches, and then there's this 1900 year gap or silence where everything starts up again when Jesus Christ returns. So, but no one's got a very good explanation for almost a 2,000 year gap. And then there's the view that I believe to be the most logical and the most correct, and the one we've taught in our assembly, and that is the historical view of the book of Revelation. That, in other words, from the time of John, around 96 AD, that God it showed him a vision through, it says, from Jesus to his angel to John, and that it was a slow revealing of time from that time forward until now of... I guess really the effect of papal Rome and pagan Rome on the church. So just next slide if we can. So, and again, I just like going through some of these things to always set a bit of a framework, because if you don't have a framework, it's really, it can be quite, hard to make sense of. But even in the very first verse of Revelation, there's a key probably to the whole book, and it just says the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants the things which must shortly come to pass. So there's the key, that it was going to be from the time of the author, from John, and he sent and signified it. The word signified's got sign. He signified it to indicate, it really means, by his angel unto his servant John. So he put it in signs and symbols, and so to know what format it was given to him, it was in signs. And you could read through the end of the first chapter, and it talks about, the 7 golden candlesticks and the 7 stars, and already they're not literal. The Lord talks about them being, 7 churches and so on, and 7 angels. Next slide. I'm just going to keep moving through this. So starting from the basis that it's symbolic, you can look through, and most people here have probably read Daniel or heard of Daniel and the vision that he had of the great image, or Daniel's image. or Nebuchadnezzar's image as it's known. And then also in Daniel chapter 7, it describes 4 creatures or 4 beasts that line up together. And Daniel saw this vision as a head of gold and a body and arms of silver and a torso of brass and legs of iron and feet that were mixed with iron and clay. And so when we're dealing with the book of Revelation, again, to give context about where does it take place, you're dealing with the Iron Kingdom, these 2 legs. And it's really, again, gives a key because Rome, or the Roman Empire, was split into east and west. So 2 legs. Eastern Rome, the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, there's a famous song about it, became Istanbul, I think, in 1930. So that's where the eastern side ended up. And then Western Rome, or the Western Kingdom of Rome. Rome was its capital. Ravenna at times was also its capital. But it broke up fairly quickly because the barbarian nations came in and conquered it. And is really where we get the 10 nations of Europe today, really dominated by the papacy, by the Roman Catholic Church. And so for the last 1,500 years or so, that's how it's been. So even though there's this image with these parts, it doesn't necessarily represent accurately the time that these kingdoms run for, but it's just a representation. So just to know that really this image is bookended, the legs of iron are bookended with the first coming of Jesus Christ and the second coming, which of course hasn't happened yet, but we're looking like who knows. And so it's a simple way to see it. If we can just go to the next slide. What I actually do want to talk about really briefly, and again, it's hard for time, but just to talk about the 4 horsemen of Revelation. We'll go into that in a minute. But just lastly in this image, the last thing Daniel sees is this stone kingdom made without hands that comes and hits this image and destroys this statue, Nebuchadnezzar's image. And, it's not a new thinking that this stone kingdom is the kingdom of Jesus Christ. There was a man or a gentleman it was a gentleman back in the times of Rome, I don't know, but Hippolytus of Rome, around AD 170, even before the Roman Empire was split, he wrote in a writing that this image, it represented empires, and this stone one was one that was yet to come, and it was going to be actually Jesus bringing judgment on the world. And so that was recorded all the way back then. And Hippolytus, he opposed the Roman system, and he was martyred because of it. So even back that, there's lots of other examples. So just keep in mind, when we think about Revelation, we think about Daniel, the Iron Kingdom, bookended by Jesus' first coming and his second coming. Next slide. So again, it's the tale of 2 kingdoms. It's the tale, the book of Revelation is the tale of the Iron Kingdom and the Stone Kingdom, which is at the return of Jesus Christ. And that's what it is. It's a magnification of those 2 things, not a futuristic vision of the future, although there are things from about Revelation 18 onwards that haven't yet been fulfilled, but most of it is historical. So again, just on to the next slide. So we see here that it's the Bible tells us, or the book of Revelation tells us, it's blessed that actually hears the words of the prophecy. So God wanted people to be able to understand it and to keep it. And he was told that the time is at hand, the things that must shortly come to pass. So it's another clue that it was from the time of John, because there was other things written in the scriptures where they were told to seal up the words of the book. But we're told, if you look in Revelation 22, it's told the time is at hand. Next slide. And again, I won't spend a lot of time on these, but in Revelation 5, it speaks about the first time about someone sitting on a throne, or saw the Lord sitting on the throne, and with a scroll that was written on the inside and the outside, and it had 7 seals, and it talks about John weeping because he couldn't see anybody worthy to open it. To show what was inside of it, and it was the Lamb or the Lion of the tribe of Judah who was worthy to actually open and reveal what happened. So it was in this scroll. So we'll go on to the next slide. And as it goes through, it talks about 7 seals. When it gets to the 7 seals, it talks about 7 trumpets being released. And at the 7th trumpet, it speaks about 7 vials. And again, I guess this has puzzled a lot of people for a lot of time. And, we don't claim to understand everything, but it's simple to see that it's a dispensation of time, that it's a bit like years containing months, months containing weeks, and weeks containing days. And it's the unfolding of events of what leading up to, from the time of John, the church, and Rome and its effect on the church, until the return of Jesus Christ. So let's go to the next slide. This is what I want to talk about here really this evening. And again, there's so much you could say on all of these things. So I want to talk about the 4 horsemen of the book of Revelation, starting in Revelation chapter 6, because again, who's ever seen some pretty fantastical things about the 4 horsemen? I know there's rock bands and all kinds of, and all kinds of, I won't advise you to Google it, but if you do, you will see all kinds of understanding. And again, it's taken from a point of view of not having a framework and just going, well, I reckon it could mean this. And but what it really shows, if we're thinking from the time of John, Revelation 6, and the first seal opens and it describes 4 horsemen. The first one is a white horse, the second one being a red, the third one a black, and the fourth one is pale, or it means livid. It's greenish in colour. And, the dates that we're going to look at here, they're not necessarily exact start dates or exact cut-off dates. They overlap each other. But just remembering that the whole focus of Revelation is this Iron Kingdom and pagan and papal Rome, and its resistance to fight against the Stone Kingdom that's going to come. That's really, it's not a history of the whole world, but it deals with the empires as they affect the church. So just next slide. So I've got a coin up here. And as I just spoke very briefly about symbols to begin with, that, we saw Daniel there was the statue of Nebuchadnezzar's image, and then there was the beasts in Daniel 7 as well. Animals and beasts generally in Revelation, or in the Bible, they generally represent empires and people. They've got a pattern that runs through it, and sometimes they represent wild beasts or fantastical creatures, like we saw a leopard with eagle's wings and so on. But sometimes they're just like a domestic type animal, and so I think Persia was represented by the ram and a goat. So that sometimes they used normal animals as well, and but they have a significance. And so the horse and the symbol of a horseman or a rider was very significant to the Romans, because the horses, and again, some of you might know some Roman history here, but the horse was one of the sacred animals of Mars, the supposed or father or god of Rome. And this coin here, it shows that it's the god. It's actually Mars that it depicts, the god of Mars, and the horse on the other side, and Roma underneath. So it was a very important symbol to them. Just next slide. So again, these coins here, again, just to illustrate, and coins are an incredible thing for showing history accurately. But we got here a couple of Roman emperors right in the time there, around the beginning of Rome there, so Domitian and Trajan. And you can see on there that there's a military rider and a ruler of Rome. And so it was a common symbol of the Roman Empire and its power. And so when we see these 4 horsemen that we're going to have a look at, it's not a big stretch to go that these represent the Roman Empire, because and these coloured horses, various states that the empire was in as this prophecy unveils. So just the first, next slide. So we're looking at a time here from John, so from 96 AD roughly to 180 AD, it's the first seal. And it talks about, and it's just in verse 2, it says, "And I saw," this is Revelation 6, "and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer." And so the colour white, because it's a white horse that he sees, it really suggests a time of majesty and victory. The Roman emperors and the generals, if they won a battle or a conquest, they would come in with a trumpet type procession, and they would come in clothed in white and on a white horse when they were successful in a battle. And so it's a very accurate symbol, and I suppose what it gives the impression of is Roman victory. And this sort of powerful commander coming in at a good time. And what we see here is this horse, this rider also says that he has a bow, but not yet a crown. It says a crown was given unto him. And the word crown actually here in the ancient Greek, it doesn't mean like the diadem crown. It means like a laurel wreath was on his head. And actually, this is used in later on. The word changes to a diadem, and that's got a significance. But so the first seal here, and this horse, this conquering horse of Rome, as a time where we're looking at 96 AD to 185, is really a time that was called the 5 good emperors of Rome, and it was a time of just a time of conquering, expanding their territory, and I guess a time of peace and growth. And the emperors back then of this time, they're not chosen actually by bloodline; they were chosen by merit. And interestingly, there's an emperor called Nerva, who was the first actually non-Roman emperor, and his background was from Crete, and the Cretans were known particularly for their use of the bow. That was something they were known for. So there we go. We'll just go to the next one. So, a time of conquering and expanding of the empire. Next slide if we can. Well, sorry, we're there. So, now we go on and we read just in the next verse, again, a different time period. It just says, "And there went out another horse that was red, and powers given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword." So we've got this change in colour now from red. So the empire goes from a time of peace and expanding to a huge time of civil war. And if you read things like Edward Gibbon, who wrote done probably some of the most in-depth on the history of Rome, he just goes through and just talks about, assassination attempt after assassination attempt of emperors as they just struggled for power. One emperor would come up, and then next thing he would be taken out, and then his sons would come in, or someone else would come in, and it was just absolute bloodshed. And this went on for a long time. This struggle for power. You're looking at like 100 years of intense civil war. In this place that enjoyed power and prosperity, and now they're turning against one another. And again, I'm just moving through this really briefly tonight because you could spend a lot of time looking at all of these things and go into a lot of history. So we will go to the next slide. So the third seal, as this is open, and these are all happening in a fairly short period of time. It says, "And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." That sounds like such a random thing, doesn't it, to put in the middle of a description. And yet it has an incredible significance because as you're funding a civil war, guess what you need? You need money. So the empire came heavily under a time of tax. And again, you just see like the horse rider holding balances or scales. And so they needed to support their civil war, and they had a lot of problem with corruption, with local, I guess, rulers making up their own tax amounts and taxing the people, and it caused a lot of problems. I just want to keep, actually, one other point. The Greek word there for hurt, where it talks about not hurting the oil and the wine, it actually means unjust. Don't be unjust in your trade for oil and wine. So that was, again, to the people who were ruling provinces, I'll give you, it was a time for them to line their own pockets. And so this prophecy is actually very, very accurate. Just next slide. So there was a famous edict of Caracalla, and what it was is he gave the opportunity for everyone who wasn't a Roman citizen to become a Roman citizen, but the catch was you now had to pay tax from your originating province, but you also had to pay tax as a Roman citizen as well. So it was another great way of getting money. And this tax corruption, they went through a lot of trouble. So the thing that it says there about, back in the verse before, about see that you hurt not, a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. The denarius that you can see up there, that coin, and again you can see the scales in one hand, and he's got a sheaf in the other hand of a crop, and it was to try and come up with a regulated balance to be able to do fair trade, so that people weren't getting overtaxed. But it didn't work very well. Last one. Next slide, if we can. It's not the last slide, but close. Close. The last one. So when you have a conquering, you have an empire expanding, then you have civil war, lots of bloodshed, and then you have heavy taxation. The next thing it says here, it says, and I looked and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword and with hunger and with death and with the beasts of the earth. And again, this just describes a really accurate picture of the Roman Empire at that time. Just incredible bloodshed. I want to read. Maybe we'll read it in a little bit. But it just says here that this is from Edward Gibbon, again, the historian. He says, plague raged without interruption in every province, every city, and almost every family in the Roman Empire. During some times, 5,000 persons died daily in Rome. It's just an incredible hardship. And it just talks about it also ruined all their agriculture. You got civil war, you got this taxation, you got people dying, then you got wild beasts who are starting to come in. There's no food, and it just, like I said, it decimated them. And so in a very succinct way for the Lord to describe the stage of the empire at that time, a pale horse is probably pretty fitting. There's some other types in Ezekiel as well of these 4 elements of sword, famine, and noisome beast and disease. But we won't look at it now. Just next slide. So this fella up here is someone by the name of Decius, and it just says here that again that in his time there's just this period of civil war and oppression. They just came into just further calamity. It's just this ongoing building of problem of war, famine, and plague. And I just want to read this from Edward Gibbon again. It's the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. It just says, during the calamitous period, every instant of time was marked. Every province of the Roman world was afflicted by barbarous invaders and military tyrants, and the ruined empire seems to approach the last and fatal moment of dissolution. We don't really write like that now. It says, this statement reflects well the dying pale colour of the horse. And it just says, just something else here. Other causes must, however, have contributed to the furious plague, which from the 250 to 265 raged without interruption every province. It talked about 5,000 people dying daily. and it talks about no one really escaping with their lives at the hands of the barbarians. And note that famine was the inevitable consequence, and just incredible persecution and problems. And why I wanted to bring this up tonight, and again, this is such a brief look at these 4 seals, you could spend a lot of time looking at Roman history with it, is, it sounds like a dire story, and I suppose it would have been for the people at that time, as a dire time, but God's accuracy to be able to, from 90s, you try and tell something 200 or 300 years later from the time it happened, and the book of Revelation goes right through to today, but just God was able to simply tell people that these things are coming, but it's okay. As in, I know it's part of my plan, it's something that has to happen. And so when we look at our world now and we go and we wonder what is going on, and people will question, is there a God? Is there, why is this happening? Because they show a lot of terrible things that are happening over in Israel and so on at the moment. God, we know he doesn't want to see people suffer, but he has a plan, and he's foretold it as well. And I do want to just turn to something in the New Testament, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, just verse 1. It says, "But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you." And so he's writing this even before what we just looked at tonight took place. He says, "For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief." In other words, if we have the Holy Ghost and we walk with the Lord, and we know our Bible, and we seek the Lord, and we know what he says about what's happening in our world, then we're not in darkness. It's not something pleasant to watch, but it's not something that should take us unexpectedly, And it goes on and just says, "For you are all the children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep, as do others, but let us watch and be sober." And there's a real, there's a warning there. I guess we don't want to look at what's going on and let it bring us down, but we've got to watch, and we've got to be sober. We've got to be humble about it and go, well, who knows? God's declared, what he says. This was prophecy that we looked at tonight when it happened, but it's now a long ago history. And the same as the return of Jesus Christ, his second coming, one day it's going to be history, maybe one day soon. The gospel era of being able to be born again of water and of the Spirit and walk with the Lord on this earth the way we do now, that is going to be history. It'll be the new kingdom. It'll be his stone kingdom that comes and is a perfect government in this world that shows this world who God really is. But I guess like is taught in religion, religion teaches if you just try and be a good person on the earth now, then you do your best, and when you die, you'll be right, you'll get a ticket in. And God's saying, no, now is the time to address our life, to look at his word and to keep his will now, because as we know, the entry to be part of that kingdom is that we've got to be born again of water and of the Spirit, and then we've got to overcome by that Spirit, and we've got to continue to worship him in spirit and in truth. The true worshipper will worship in spirit and truth. And I find the book of Revelation pretty exciting just because of the accuracy that God has been able to foretell history. And we're in an exciting time on the earth. And but like it says, let's not sleep. Let's be sober and take what God's given us, seriously. And let's use it, because there's a lot of people who are, the person next to me at work said, "I just bury my head in the sand like an ostrich." That was exactly their words. And a lot of people do that, not just because they don't know what else to do, but we know that there's something that you can have a peace, that you don't have to be afraid, and you can see through a glass darkly about what's coming, but have an incredible security about it because God's already declared it, and there's a great and terrible day of the Lord. There's terrible things ahead, but there's also great things ahead for the people that stay faithful to God. I'll leave it there. Amen. All right, we will have a time of prayer actually, so a prayer line. So again, just anybody at all wanting prayer, come forward. There'll be someone here to pray with you. Doesn't matter what the need is. The Holy Spirit, whether it's for whatever need in your life, God knows what we have need of. Let's just enjoy a bit of time in prayer together now.